All right, good evening, everybody. It's your boy Akeem from Pro Football Exclusive, here to continue with my 2004 NFL draft grades. For today, I need to talk about the AFC North division. Starting with the Baltimore Ravens, they did a great job, especially on the defensive side. With their first two picks, the first pick they went with C.J. Mosley, the inside linebacker and Butkus Award winner coming out of Alabama. I think this was a good pick on the defensive side. It was questionable at first, but I had to respect their selection. I thought they should have either went with an offensive tackle or possibly a wide receiver with their first pick, but then they decided to create more depth on the defensive side and maintain a strong defense. And same with the second round. They stuck on the defensive side and picked up a defensive tackle out of Florida State, Tim Jernigan, an All-American. He could be working along with and work under the wing of Haloti Ngata. In the third round, they picked up two decent players. Starting with at the safety position, their first pick, they went with Terrence Brooks out of Florida State. Now, he definitely has a chance to replace James Ehudabo, who's no longer with the team. And I think this would be a perfect opportunity for him to start on the defensive side. Now, also in the third round, they picked up a good tight end coming out of Colorado State and Crockett Gilmore. Now, he's coming off of a 47 reception and 577 yards receiving last season at the tight end position. And they still trying to keep that tight end strong with Dennis Pitta. You don't really know what to expect for him coming towards this season, and they picked up a good tight end who can even help out in the run game as a blocker, but more as a receiver. He did have a decent career as a Ram. Now in the fourth round, they still stick with the defensive side and went with defensive end from Virginia, but who's more of a defensive tackle, and Brett Urban, who had 40 tackles last season and 11.5 tackles for loss. I think this was a decent selection. And finally, within that fourth round, they finally went with an offensive player and running back Lorenzo Taliaferro out of Coastal Carolina. He's coming off of a 1,700-yard season. Now, I did look at his clips. Not too flashy, not too big of a running back. He did come from a FCS school, but I still think he could become a good ground gainer for the rushing attack with Ray Rice as well as Bernard Pierce, who should be still ahead of Lorenzo, but we will see. Anything can happen. Now, in the fifth round, it stuck with an offensive guy from Penn State, John Urshow. I think this was a decent selection to address the offensive line, even though I think they should have picked him up in the earlier rounds, picked up an O-lineman in the earlier rounds. And in the sixth round, they went with their quarterback and Keith Winning out of Ball State. He's coming off of his best season, 35 touchdown passes and 7 interceptions. He had a great career as a Cardinal, and I do think that he could help out be a good backup quarterback behind Joe Flacco, unless Tyrod Taylor has enough to say for it to be that backup quarterback. He's going to be battling out with Winning. And in the final pick, they went with the wide receiver out of Wake Forest and Mike Campanero. I think he's an okay receiver. Hopefully, he can make the 53-man roster. Now, overall for their grade, I'm going to have to give them a solid B. Now, I personally believe that they should have went with the wide receiver in the earlier rounds, even though they did pick up Steve Smith from the Carolina Panthers during this offseason. But you're not really sure what you're going to get from him for the Baltimore Ravens. I think they should have went with a receiver in the earlier rounds as well as the offensive lineman. But to address the defensive side and maintain a strong defense, they did a great job. And I understand Ozzie Newsome's thought on sticking things with their defensive side. And let's not forget, it is Ozzie Newsome. He does know what he's doing. Help pick up 2 Super Bowl winning teams. So overall, I'm going to have to give them a B. Next team I need to talk about is the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, I'm going to have to give them a B minus. Some of their picks I was a little bit questionable about, a little bit shaky about, but their first 2 picks were pretty good. With their first pick, they went with the cornerback from Michigan State and Darqueze Dennard. He was the Jim Thorpe Award winner this past season, given to the nation's top defensive back. I think this was an excellent choice to address the cornerback position. And at the second round, this was a questionable pick, but I do understand. They went with Jeremy Hill, the running back out of LSU. Now, he is more of a bruiser type running back, and we do know that Giovanni Bernard has a little bit of health issues, but Jarvis Green Ellis, he's kind of getting more into veterancy and coming towards the end of his career. That's just my personal opinion, but I think that Jeremy Hill can be that guy to become a good dual threat with him and Giovanni Bernard and be more of an insurance policy at running back, because Giovanni Bernard does have some health issues. Now, with their third round pick, they went with Will Clark, the defensive end out of West Virginia. I'm not really too impressed with this guy. Now, he does show a little bit of athleticism, but his numbers weren't really up to par at West Virginia, even though he had to deal with a lot of double teams. And going to the fourth round, they went with a center from UNC, Russell Budine. I think this was a decent selection. Now, in the fifth round, this could cause a little bit of quarterback controversy here. They went with A.J. McCarron coming out of Alabama. Now, I personally believe he's not going to take Andy Dalton's spot, but just if the Cincinnati Bengals aren't really having too much faith in Andy Dalton, they could go in the direction of A.J. McCarron, even though I don't think he's going to play up to par at the next level. That's just my personal opinion. Going to the sixth round, Marquise Flowers. Now, this was a good selection. The outside linebacker out of Arizona. He had two impressive good seasons. Had over 193 tackles and over 20 tackles for loss for the past 2 seasons. I think this was a great selection to work along with Vontaze Burfict. I think that Flowers should be able to make the team. Now, in the seventh round, these are two players that's going to be fighting for a roster spot. LSU wide receiver James Wright, he's a decent player. I think they could have went with a better wide receiver, as well as Lavelle Westbrook. He's actually he had a little bit of a down season compared to previous seasons at Georgia Southern, but I think he could have the shot to make the team and at least probably be the third string cornerback and work out in special teams. But anything can happen. We will see. So overall, I'm going to have to give them a B-. Had a couple of questionable selections. I think they could have went with stronger, better players, especially with that Will Clark selection. I think they could have went with a better defensive end who could put up more numbers. Next thing we need to talk about is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, I like this draft a lot. Starting with their first pick, I thought they should have went with a defensive tackle, but they started addressing the defensive players later in the later rounds. They went with the offside linebacker from the Ohio State and Ryan Shazier. I think this was an excellent selection. I did not like the selection at first, but then when I started looking at it, I was like, yeah, this is a good pick. Now, he's not a premier pass rusher that you're looking for, but he is definitely a little bit of a ball hawk. He would definitely get from sideline to sideline and possibly lead the team in tackles, unless Lawrence Timmons. It's going to be between him and Lawrence Timmons for the leading tackler for the Pittsburgh Steelers. In the second round, they finally went to try to address the defensive line. They went with a defensive end who can play the defensive tackle position, and Stephen Tuitt out of Notre Dame. I think this was a good selection. Now, in the third and fourth round, they finally went with some decent offensive weapons who could be sleepers for this team. Starting with the third round, they picked up Dre Archer, the running back coming out of Kent State. Now, he can even help out in special teams, and I think he could be a little small home run threat offensively, even though he's a small guy, but he's very fast, runs a 4.40. And in the fourth round, they picked up a big receiver out of Clemson, and I think he could be possibly number 2, Martavius Bryant. I think he has great size at 6'3", 211 pounds. I think he could possibly be a good number 2 receiver behind Antonio Brown. Now, in the fifth round, they had a couple of questionable selections. Shaquille Richardson out of Arizona. I think this was a decent pick, as well as the Vanderbilt center, Wesley Johnson. They both were selected in the fifth round. Kind of questionable both of those selections, but I still think we will see. I think they still can make the team. And in the sixth round, they picked up 2 better players, my personal opinion. And Jordan Zumwalt, the linebacker out of UCLA. Now, he's kind of had a decent career as a Bruin. I think this could be a good selection. I think he should be able to make the team. And defensive tackle, Daniel McCullers out of Tennessee. I think this could be a sleeper, a good steal in the 6th round. I think he could possibly start at the defensive tackle position and have Stephen Tuitt play at defensive end to address the defensive line. I think they did a good job addressing that D line. And with their final pick, they went with the tight end out of UMass and Rob Blanchflower. Now, he had just under 500 yards receiving last season at 6'4", 256 pounds. I think he's going to be used more as a blocking tight end, but we will see. Hopefully, he will make the team. Being in the 7th round, that there's no guarantee that you will make the 53-man roster, and hopefully he could be in the 53-man roster in special teams and be more used as a blocking tight end as opposed to a pass catching receiving tight end. Now, overall for this team, I'm gonna give them a B+, possibly an A-. Still kind of thinking things through. I do like their first 4 picks a lot, but right now I'm gonna give them a B+. In the later rounds, they're a little bit questionable picks at round 5, but I have to give them a B+ overall, especially for the first 4 selections. They had some excellent picks. Now, last but not least, the Cleveland Browns. Now, if you look at the selections, they did a great job. Now, there was only one minor problem that I have during this draft for the Cleveland Browns, and one big problem that I have. Let's first talk about their picks. Their first overall selection, they actually traded down a 5th round pick from pick number 9 Actually, they started up at pick number 4, then traded back to pick number 9, and then with the Buffalo Bills, and then they actually traded down to get to pick number 8 and lost a 5th round selection. And I don't think it was worth a 5th round selection. And they ended up picking Justin Gilbert, a great cornerback coming out of Oklahoma State, who's going to be working opposite of Joe Hayden, who signed a big time contract, well over $60 million. And I think he could be a good player opposite of Joe Hayden, but I don't think he was actually going to be worth losing a 5th round selection. I think he should have been still available at number 9. And in their second first round selection, they finally went with that quarterback, and I think he could become the franchise quarterback. And Johnny Manziel out of Texas A&M, I have him as my offensive rookie of the year this upcoming season. Now, in the second round, they addressed the offensive line, an offensive tackle from Nevada, and Joel Bitonio. He's a great player, and I think this was an excellent selection to work with Joe Thomas, who's a great veteran and an all-pro offensive lineman, and I think he would definitely make the National Football League Hall of Fame. Now, in the third round, they picked up a great outside linebacker coming out of Iowa, and Christian Kersey. He had a couple of 100 tackle seasons for the Hawkeyes, and I think he could be blending well with Carlos Dansby, who is the new signee on that defensive side. I think both of these players can work well together. And sticking with the third round, then they picked up a good sleeper running back in Terrence West out of Towson. I think he would possibly be the number 2 running back, if not the number 1 running back for this team. Now, we know that they signed Big Bang Tate from the Houston Texans. I think that was a great signing and a good addition for the running backs team, but I still think that because of those health issues, he might even lose his job to Terrence West, and I think that this is a great opportunity for West, even though Ben Tate is that number 1 guy for now. If he stays healthy, I think Ben Tate can be very dangerous, but if not, we can still be on the lookout for a good backup in Terrence West. And with their final pick, they went with in the fourth round, they picked up Pierre Desire out of Lindenwood. I think this was a great selection, bringing more depth at the corner position. And they lost T.J. Ward. They could have went with the wide receiver, but the big concern that I had, the big problem that I had during this draft is that the Browns did not go with a wide receiver, and they should have went with a wide receiver within these first 4 rounds. Now, they had some great selections with their 5 picks, but I think they could have went with a wide receiver, and I don't really think, and that minor issue is losing that 5th round selection. Possibly they could have gotten a wide receiver with that 5th round pick, but I should have went with a wide receiver within the 3rd round. That's just my personal opinion. That 3rd round, I think they should have went with the wide receiver, especially knowing that Josh Gordon could be missing for the entire season due to the drug abuse that he's been dealing with, and he might be facing a season-long suspension. And they could have went with the wide receiver. Plus, they put Greg Luter off waivers, in which the Oakland Raiders actually just picked up during the past couple of days. And I think that the Greg Little loss was not too big of a loss, but they lost another wide receiver, and they could have picked up a good wide receiver within this draft. Now, they did sign Miles Austin from the Dallas Texans, but I feel like Forrest Gump in that with that pickup, because I believe that life is like a bunch of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get, and this is pretty much what I believe in Miles Austin. I don't really know what they're gonna get, what the Cleveland Browns are really getting, because for the past 2 seasons he had some down years, but compared to seasons ago where he was a 2-time Pro Bowler, he's having some down years. He's been dealing with some injuries. I think this could be a decent pickup, but I'm not too impressed, but we will see. We never know what you're going to get. Now, overall, I'm going to have to give the Cleveland Browns a B+ for their selections, even though they didn't have to trade the 5th round selection, and they should have went with a wide receiver within this draft, and that's why I had to give them a B+. Had they went with the wide receiver, I would have given them a solid A. They did a great job with their picks. Now, the next time I'm going to catch you guys is tomorrow, where I will finally wrap things up with all of my grades to give you my grades for the AFC South Division. I'll see you guys then. Thank you for watching today's blog. From Pro Football Exclusive, I'm your man, Akeem McCall. Be easy.